I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous presenter, Nicole TuckerSmith, coming to us from Baltimore, Maryland. And so here we go. Thank you.
Hi, welcome everyone. I am Nicole TuckerSmith. I am coming in from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation today, this Equity Community Conference. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen because there are a few items that I'm going to share with you, but I do want this to be a conversation. So there'll be moments where if you have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat. And then there will be other moments where I'll say, if anyone feels so moved, please feel free to unmute and share. And I definitely want to encourage that we are talking about breaking the burnout cycle with hope. And you may have noticed that we've had some stressful times lately. And so maybe you've felt a little bit of burnout here and there. Maybe the young people in your life have been experiencing some burnout, some physical or emotional exhaustion. And we are going to talk about some research-based yet practical strategies for breaking that burnout cycle. And so again, my name is Nicole TuckerSmith. I have been a teacher primarily in the middle school area, but also elementary, and I'm an instructor at Johns Hopkins University School of Education. I've also been a principal, and in addition to that, I've worked in the central office in professional development. I am a parent. I have two children, both middle schoolers, 6th grade and 8th grade, getting ready to go to high school. And I'm an author. I wrote a book called Supercharge Your Professional Learning. It's all about thinking about ways to have health and wellness in our learning spaces. I'm also the founder of an organization called LessonCast, and I'm a survivor. So 2020 brought many surprises, including breast cancer in my life. And so a lot of this work and this research that I'm going to share with you is something that I read about, discovered, and then internalized in trying to break through some of the exhausting moments going through breast cancer treatment, especially during COVID and other challenges that came along the way. And so I like to say that I am stronger for it. And if there's just any little piece of my story that can be helpful to someone else, I want to make sure that I share that and put it out into the universe. So this is what you can expect today. We're going to start with the goal. I think it's always important to talk about where we want to go in order to get there. If you don't pick a destination, you just tend to wander around. So we're going to start with the goal. Then we will define what burnout is and what are some signs to look for it. How do we name it so that we can then address it? Then we'll talk about the neuroscience of hope, why these strategies work in terms of how our brain operates. And then I'm going to share with you some hope strategies for breaking the burnout cycle. It's good to have these strategies on hand before burnout becomes an issue. And so there'll be a handout and a takeaway that you may be able to use in your setting. Okay, so here's the goal where we're trying to go at the end of our conversation today. We are going to share research-based yet practical strategies for one, addressing burnout, two, adopting healthy habits, and then three, managing stress. So that's where we're going in our conversation today. And so in order to start this conversation, we are going to do a bit of an assessment. There's a little quiz, just a little quiz. It's not going to be too hard. There are no trick questions. And I'm going to put in the chat a link to a handout. So I'm going to ask 6 questions. And for these questions, you're going to want to picture here. Let's see, to everyone, I'm going to put this handout here. So if you don't like looking at my screen, I'm going to read the questions, but if you don't like looking at my screen, you will also be able to access, here we go, access this via the handout. Okay, so it's a Google Doc. If you want to click on it, you'll also want to have it, even if you don't look at it now, because it has some strategies for later. But I like to provide multiple ways for folks to hear, read, see just perceive the content. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to ask 6 questions, and for each of these questions, picture a young person in your life. So it may be your child, it may be students that you work with, some young person who's in your life. And all of these questions are going to relate to the last 3 months or so. Now, if you're looking at the Google Doc, what you'll see is it looks like this. And so it's the same things that I'm going to read. And when it says things like to what extent or how often, the range is from never or almost never, once or twice a month, weekly, or daily. And this is just to get a sense of how often these characteristics may be appearing. One of the most important things to think about with burnout is sometimes we can be in it, not even realize it. And we can't address it if we don't name it and we're not aware of it. And so this is something that you can use later in your life in other situations. But let's just take a moment to picture a young person or two or three in your life right now. Question number 1. In the last 3 months, how often has your young person expressed feeling overwhelmed or shown signs of being overwhelmed? So they've either said it, they may have said things like, oh, I just can't take this anymore. Or they've shown other signs of being overwhelmed. So now I'm going to pause and let you think about that. Okay, question number 2. To what extent has your young person shown a lack of motivation to participate in school? A lack of motivation to participate in school. So that can be participating in the class or Zoom. It could also be lack of motivation to do homework. Okay, question 3. Has your young person shown or expressed more than usual difficulty paying attention? So notice the word more than usual. So in the last 3 months, they've expressed more than usual difficulty paying attention. All right, now, to what extent has your young person displayed anger or frustration about things that were outside of their control? Anger or frustration about things outside of their control. Number 5. To what extent has your young person shown a lack of empathy or concerns for others? Lack of empathy or concern. Okay, now number 6 is a little bit different. It's more in the positive. To what extent has your young person shown confidence in their abilities to problem solve and handle challenging situations? To what extent has your young person shown confidence in their ability to problem solve and handle challenging situations? Now, if you're doing this on the Google Doc, what you can do is you can add up your numbers. Most of them move 1, 2, 3, 4. The last one goes 4, 3, 2, 1. 2. Never is this way. And so if you add them up, a higher score indicates more likelihood of burnout. So if you have a very high score, if the young person you were thinking about has a high score, we need to really be concerned and we need to proactively address or even responsively address to the burnout. Now, here's the thing about burnout. If there is a high level of burnout, if those numbers are high, if there are lots of signs of burnout, burnout is directly related to stress. It's like two sides of the coin. When there is an overabundance of stress, toxic stress, that leads to burnout. And so if we're going to address burnout, we need to understand stress and how do we manage it. So when we look at managing stress, We all have this window of stress tolerance, and it's different for every person. But one way to understand the window of stress tolerance is to think about it like a glass of water. How much water you have in that glass is your window of stress tolerance. Now, some people may have a very full glass, other people may have a little bit of water in a glass, and you can even differ depending on the day, depending on what's going on. Maybe something happened to pour some of your water out, right? But your window of stress tolerance is staying below the water level. Because when you are staying within that water level, within that window of stress tolerance, we're able to be what is called regulated. We're able to manage our emotions, control our impulses, handle life. Our young people are more able to handle school activities. They're able to reason. They're able to problem solve. We want to stay in that window because stress is going to happen. It's about whether or not we're in a place where we can tolerate it. How we respond to the stress makes all the difference. And so, what happens when we get above that window of stress tolerance, we are now dysregulated. And when we as human beings become dysregulated, we may become triggered. So now we could tolerate the stress below the water level. Now that we're above the water level, just one little thing can make us snap at somebody because now we're above our window of our regulation. And so this is why when we're under a great deal of stress, and if you're driving and you're trying to figure out where you're going and you may be a little lost, you start turning down the radio. This is why we need to reduce sensory input when we get above our window. When we're above our window, we're going to have trouble listening, comprehending. When our young people are in a dysregulated state, that is not the time to try to reason with them because they're dysregulated. We need to help them come back down to their window of stress tolerance before we can help them regulate. Sometimes when you see someone who's very agitated, we're trying to regulate and reason with them. That's not the time. We have to figure out how do we do some calming strategies to bring them back down to the window of stress tolerance. And I'm going to share a few of those. And so what we have to remember is that when we're above this window of stress tolerance, that's called toxic stress. Because you're going to have stress, but you don't want to get to the level of where it's toxic. Because when we have been riding on that toxic stress road for too long, it leads to burnout. So, what are we going to do about it? Well, first, we have to really understand what burnout is. The definition, the easiest definition of understanding burnout is that it is a state of emotional and or physical and or mental exhaustion, and it is caused by excessive prolonged stress. So if you want to address burnout, we have to look at how we're addressing stress. Now, before we dive into how we attack stress so that we can break the burnout cycle, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions so far, because that was a lot. The window of stress tolerance, understanding the relation between stress and burnout. Maybe you have a question about the learner burnout assessment or how you might be able to use it. I'm going to do a little wait time for a moment to see if anybody has any questions or comments. So yes, so is a question about would we give the assessment to our students? So especially with, I would say, adolescents, you could give them the assessment. Obviously, you would need to change the words a little bit. That's why you have it as a Google Doc. You would need to tweak it. So instead of saying, how often have your young person, it could be like, how often have you? To what extent have you? And it could be something that they just do personally, or it could be something that they choose to share. If you do it, I would say also share some of the strategies that I'm going to share with you, because it may not be helpful for someone to be like, oh, I'm burned out and I have nothing, I don't know what to do. Right. So if you're going to help them name it, we also want to help them process and move through it. Move through it. Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. But what we can also do is use that assessment to tune our eye into looking for things. Because sometimes young people, when they're going through something that's not what they're used to, they're not really ready to name it. But if we can be more observant, we can help them apply strategies. Yes, I'm going to go back to this. So here, I think this is, so I have a question about going back to the slide about regulated and dysregulated. Is this it? Okay, yes. So one thing I wanted to say is I'm going to share with you in a few moments, we're going to share some strategies, some of the HOPE strategies, and some of those HOPE strategies help people get back to that window of stress. So when we're dysregulated, we're above the window. And some of the HOPE strategies I'm going to share with you are going to help people move back down to the window. Some of those strategies, though, are also going to help people increase their window. So the two ways we can deal with toxic stress is we can build our level of stress tolerance, we can raise it. And sometimes when we go through something challenging, we actually do increase our level of stress tolerance. And this is why it's also important to think about with young people, they just literally haven't been alive for as long. And so sometimes when something difficult is happening, it feels like the worst thing ever because it is the worst thing that has ever happened to them. And so helping them process and move through it, we can help them raise that level of stress tolerance. But when they're dysregulated, when they're in a fight or flight mode, when you can see it, when they're just very agitated, that's when we want to do like strategies. I'm going to share like breathing strategies, positive mantras, come back down. Then we can talk about problem solving, but no problem solving while we're dysregulated. That's one of the biggest, most common mistakes I've seen when we're working with young people and trying to work through burnout and stress. Okay, so I hope that was the slide. If it wasn't, let me know. All right. Won't any more questions? Okay, so we've defined burnout. And now we see that if we're going to address burnout and exhaustion, we have to address stress. So how are we going to address stress? Our greatest weapon as human beings, our greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another thought. And this is really key because stress is going to happen. Problems are going to come. Rain is going to fall. And this is a lesson. This is something that we have to continue to help our young people understand that challenges are going to come. Our greatest weapon is how we deal with those challenges, how we choose one thought over another. And so understanding how to choose one thought over another, it's helpful if we know just a little bit. You don't need to know a lot, but just know a little bit about how our brains work in the neuroscience of hope. So here is an image of a brain. And this part right here that's circled, you don't really need to know that fancy name, but it's called the rostral anterior cingulate cortex if you want to know that. But all you need to know is that's where hope lives. So that's the part in our brain that gets activated when we feel hopeful. And what's really exciting about understanding where that part of the brain is that here on the inside, this is where our emotions are activated. And so another way to think about it, this is our brain right here in the core, right here in the core. That's the area that controls our emotions. You also can think about it as the limbic system. This is where our emotion, our mood is activated. And then here in the prefrontal cortex right here, that's what controls our actions, the things that we do, our decision making. That's the part that's also, it's still developing well beyond high school, the prefrontal cortex. But what's exciting about this is hope lives in the place where our actions can influence our emotions and where our emotions can influence our actions. That is why hope is literally a choice. How we act can then influence how we feel, and how we feel can influence how we act. And there are some strategies that we can do so that we encourage more positive actions, and those more positive actions influence our emotions. It's one of the reasons why smiling Even when you don't feel happy, smiling actually affects your emotions because that physical action in our brain starts to help us rethink how we feel. And so there are a few concrete strategies called I worked with my son, and I created this mnemonic for some. We organized a bunch of hope strategies, and so we use the mnemonic to help us remember, because what you don't want to do is wait until you get burned out to try to go back to a strategy. You want to already be using these strategies before you get burnt out, so that you're able to really get back into it once there may be a more challenging situation. You don't wait till you have an emergency to pack a first aid kit. You already have your first aid kit packed, so it's ready to go when you have an emergency. So here are a few strategies that you can include in your hope kit for either yourself or any young people that you're working with. And so, one thing I want to share with you, in case you find this helpful, the third page of the learner burnout assessment is the list of hope strategies. And so all the strategies I'm going to share are here in case you want to use them. And I'm going to pause and ask questions, and somebody may give you an idea that you can add. You can save a copy, make your own version of the Google Doc, and add your own notes to it. Maybe others will be able to share some strategies that work for them. I love doing these workshops because I usually get new tips from everybody who comes. Okay, so the first letter, H, is for hone in. Hone in, focus, be mindful of how you're feeling. Humans can actually go through a state of burnout day in and day out and not realize they're burnt out. People can be depressed and not realize they're depressed. And so we do need to take time to really assess how we're feeling. Process what is happening for us right now in the moment. One strategy, a simple strategy to do, is to take time to breathe. Our breath directly influences how we feel. When we get nervous, if we're breathing very shallow, our brain thinks we're in trouble. Our brain thinks we're in a fight or flight mode. And so if we want to calm down, one of the best ways to do that is our breath. Whenever I can feel it, when I start to get nervous or anxious, I can feel myself tightening up. And that's when I say, I need to do my 4-7-8 breathing. This is what 4-7-8 breathing looks like. So you're going to breathe in for 4 counts, you hold it for 7 counts, and you breathe out for 8 counts. So and this is one I learned from Dr. Shields, who did the opening. And so this is something that if you ever run into him, you can say, I shared his strategy with you. All right. So the strategy looks like this. You're going to breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale for 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And do that a couple of times, and your body starts to chill out just a little bit. The next thing about honing in is really paying attention to our words. Thinking about the words that we say. So if you are working with young people and they're like, this sucks, this is terrible, da, 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 da. Those words are not helpful. Now, it may be our first reaction, and that's okay, but we don't want to stay there. And one of my favorite quotes is from India Arie: the words that come from your mouth, you're the first to hear. So we need to be thinking about the words that we're saying. And that's why it's important to have some positive mantras, some positive things to say. And so I'm going to pause and hear from any of you if you want to add in the chat or say, what are some positive words that you have shared, positive words that encourage you? Yes, Juanita. Sí se puede. That is helping us. That is encouraging. That's letting us know that things are possible. And what it does is, the more we say mantras like "sí se puede," we remember the last time we came through something. You got this. We got this. Let's do this. That's right. That was actually, "we got this" was actually my favorite, my family's mantra when I was going through cancer treatments. when I was like, I don't want to do this, they were like, nope. Actually, what it was you got this and we got you. That was our mantra in our house. You got this and we got you. You can do hard things. Yes, you can. You are strong. Finish. I love that. Finish. That's a good one. Yes, all of these. And so what we want to do is we want to have these mantras in our back pocket. Like if I'm going to save this chat because next time I give this handout, I'm going to have some of these mantras in the handout. These are great. I know I can. That's right. Yes. And I think there is a song that uses that too. And so I can even hear it in my brain, and hearing that, I know I can. Yes. Si se puede. It's going to help me, encourage me. Yes. Positivity is a choice that I choose to make. Excellent. And so, something else that we can do to help us hone in on this feeling and really build on this feeling of hopefulness is to measure it. We can just say, like, well, how hopeful am I feeling right now? Okay, well, maybe I can do something to increase that. And we can keep a gratitude journal. Having a gratitude journal, saying thank you, recognizing that these are all of the things that I am grateful for. Yes, everything is not perfect, but oh my goodness, so many things I'm grateful for is one of the most effective ways for shifting to more positive thoughts. Yes, take time to fill our cup, telling ourselves, you know what? You are worth this. You are worth this. Great. Woo, this is exciting. I like those. Okay, so that's the first letter. H is for hone in. O is for overcome. Overcoming, thinking about overcoming helps us envision future possibilities. Overcoming stories are like being in flight simulators. When we hear about anybody else overcoming, we now have put ourselves in the seat of the person. We become the hero in the story, and we are living with them. They're overcoming. We're thinking about how they had a trial, how they worked, and how they got to the other side, and now they're stronger for it. So just hearing those stories, telling those stories help to increase our level of hopefulness. And so with our young people, we want to have ways to read about, view, hear, whether it's moments in history. And we're not just talking about the folks who get in the history books. We're talking about other folks who should be in history books. You can talk about your family members in a good way, a good overcoming way, right? We can talk about something that maybe you have overcome. Sharing examples of overcoming a challenge in our life can help our young people. We can also help them visualize themselves achieving a goal. So it's almost like they're telling their story and they're writing their ending in advance. They're saying, yes, this is what's going to happen. This is what it's going to look like when I achieve that goal. And it helps increase their level of hopefulness to getting towards that goal. Does anyone have any good overcoming stories that they like to use or think about when they may have been going through a challenge?
I do.
Yes, please share.
I am a teen mom, or was a teen mom. Now I'm 25, and I was pregnant my senior year of high school, and I graduated high school. Didn't tell any of my teachers, and then I went to community college, and a counselor there told me that I wasn't a statistic, and if I decided to go to college pregnant and give birth during my college year, I will most likely drop out and not get good grades. And I overcame whatever the heck she had to say to me, which was very hurtful at the time. And I graduated community college with my 3-year-old son. And now I am at a university trying to get my bachelor's degree.
Yes, yes. And your story, your testimony helps others. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing that, because you persevered and you now are able to inspire others. And what so many things I love about what you shared, but it's about just not listening to the naysayers. And somebody needs to hear that. Others can identify with being told, oh, no, you can't, or you're just going to be. But you shared a beautiful example of not letting somebody else write your story and overcoming. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And so I feel inspired. And what happens when we live through we're hearing somebody else's overcoming story, we're all lifted. We're all lifted. And so then the next letter, P, is for physical action, physical action. And physical actions, it seems almost too simple, but literally exercise, movement, expression can help us feel more hopeful. And so we want to find opportunities to move. Even I have found, like, whenever I'm stressed and I'm, sitting down, standing up and just saying, yes, doing that little champion move or something like that. Or I'll tell you another little secret. I love to dance. And one of the things I love to do is I'll put on a little soca music and do a little soca dance, automatically feel lifted, automatically feel lifted. Another way to start to feel a little bit more alive is to just go for a walk. Any type of physical activity actually does lift our spirits. Another way to think about this physical action is creative expression. Creative expression literally means I'm going to take what's on the inside and pour it out. And so there's lots of different ways. Maybe you all can share some ways to that you've expressed yourself creatively that helps you, makes you feel more hopeful. Poetry, drawing, gardening, yes. Oh my gosh, gardening, when you see something grow. Poetry, walking, yes. Sometimes singing a song, right? All of those are beautiful ways. Writing a story, creating something, playing the ukulele. Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Creating something. I always think creating, singing, you're a singer. So when we create music, you ever have that awesome experience of realizing that is something that wasn't there before that we just created? Yes. All right. And one more thing, dancing. Yes. All right. I'm with you. I love dancing. Yes. And creating movement. It's like taking something from the inside and it becomes on the outside. And then one more thing about physical action, and this is a little bit more of a mental thing, but we're taking a step. Any small step towards a goal is still progress. Any step forward is progress. And so one thing when I was going through cancer treatments, and I was like, there are many days where I was like, I just really don't feel like going through chemo. I don't want to do that. One thing I had to do was I had to keep my end goal in mind, but also, okay, what's the one thing I need to do today? Just the one next step. If I thought about all the things in between, it was overwhelming. But if we can help young people talk through, that's my end goal and my one next step. That's one step forward. And I love silly songs that you sing. Yes, to your dogs. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's your mantra too. Any step forward is progress. Yes. Tell it over and over again. Whenever we get stuck, that's a good one. Any step forward, all I need to do is take one step forward, and that's progress. I love it. Take it, steal it. It's yours. Make it yours. All right. So the last letter, E, embrace. Embrace. A 20-second hug. Now, I know that there's a little bit of trouble with, we have to do physical distancing, but in your own household now. All right. So you can physically hug somebody for 20 seconds and that will improve mood. That will improve mood. A hug improves mood. Embrace hope. Spread hope. It's contagious. If you are positive and smiling and hopeful, it is contagious. Also, plan for positive social interactions. Plan for it, schedule it, having family dinner time. When we can, having small get togethers, put it on the calendar. We're going to have social interactions with one another. Maybe that's a family Zoom or that you do once a week or something like that. Also, just validating strengths. Sometimes young people can get so bogged down in what's not going for them and not see all of the beautiful strengths that they bring. So helping to validate that, helping them to see those strengths. Also with Embrace, this is why a lot of this is about being in community with one another. If once we can help youth set goals, we also need to encourage them to share those goals so that others can encourage you. We are much more likely to reach our goals if we've told somebody else it's a goal. If we told them, hey, this is a goal, they're going to now be your accountability buddy. I call it, it's your accountability buddy, right? And so they're the ones who are going to say, hey, remember you said you were going to do that thing? How's that going? In a positive way, in an encouraging way. And then the last note here on E is celebrate progress. And guess what? Even making a mistake, as long as we learn from it, is progress. Now, we don't want to keep making the same mistake over and over again. But when we make mistakes, and this is what we need to do to celebrate with young people, you made a mistake. Great. Now we can learn from it. We can learn from it and celebrate that as progress. And so those are just a few tips that I'm hoping you can take away. And I like to give everyone a moment to process and think, is there one strategy that you heard today that you think might benefit a young person in your life? And is there a strategy maybe that you want to adopt? Now, you don't have to tell us which one it is, but are there any strategies that you say, you know what, I'm going to take that away and use it either for me or for someone in my life? You can unmute or put it in the chat. Positivity. Yes. Positivity is contagious. It's contagious. And thinking about our words that we say, are they positive words? Negative words will bring you down. Literally. Positive words will lift us up. Dancing. Yes. Dancing. Just put on some music. Put on some music. Yep. Or actually, and also with dancing, there are so many classes now online, on Instagram. It's just fun. Yes, the physical aspect of smiling, movement, any physical gestures in a positive way, right? The smiling, the even hugging yourself, it really does trigger your mood. This is why your actions impact your mood. And it almost sounds too good to be true, but it is true. Your actions influence your mood. And then in turn, it's a positive cycle. Your mood influences your actions. That's how you break the burnout cycle. You flip it. Your actions influence your mood, and then in turn, your mood will influence your actions into moving forward. So I know we're nearing our time. I have one other thing I want to share with you. This quote: sometimes when we're in a rainy season, right? We're in a rainy season, and we're like, "Whoa, oh my gosh, if we could just get out of it." I mean, how many of us said, "Whoa, if we can just get to 2021, things will be so much better." And guess what? We are still here in this, right? So sometimes we have to recognize that there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We keep waiting to come out of this COVID and get to our pot of gold. Well, you know what? There is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The rainbow is the treasure. The moment that we are in, the present, is the gift. We are here. We are living. We are surviving and hopefully thriving. The rainbow is the treasure. The pushing through, the perseverance, that is what makes us stronger. And if we keep searching for that pot of gold that doesn't exist at the end of the rainbow, we are missing all of the blessings in the moment. And that's something that we can help our young people understand too. And it's also something that we can remind ourselves. So the rest of the time, yes. So the rest of the time, I'm going to open it up for any questions. Also, we have this survey that we would love for you to fill out for us, please. And you can share with us some feedback. If this was helpful to you at all, please let us know. If it wasn't, let us know. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for being here. You know what? One of the reasons why I love to give this talk is because it makes me happier. Every time I say these words, it lifts my spirits too. It lifts my spirits too. So I'm hoping that you can use the information, take that Google Doc, that handout, add to it, tweak it, share it, spread the word, spread the hope. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? Every time I share my personal story, I remember I did that. I came through that. Now I'm on the other side of that. I'm on the other side of that. Yes, spread hope. Is anybody want to unmute or say anything? I guess we could probably stop the recording if they don't want to be on camera or anything.